Hey everyone, welcome to the Founder Hour with Pat and Posh. For episode 14, we sat down with Teni Panosian. Teni is the perfect example of someone who took the road less traveled, and that has surely made all the difference in her life. Instead of going into the corporate world, she started blogging and eventually became an influencer, creating beauty tutorials on makeup, skincare, hair, and other fun stuff. Although Pat and I don't necessarily relate to the world of beauty, her story and perseverance leading to her success was truly inspiring. Here we go.
You know, there was so much error along the way, but if I hadn't failed all those times, I wouldn't have, eventually found my way. No path is gonna be, okay, we were planning this and everything's gonna go according to plan. It just does not happen that way.
Hey, what's up, everyone? You're tuned in to the Founder Hour, and we're hanging out today with Teni Panosian. She's a social media influencer, and so really excited to have you on the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, usually we like to kick off the podcast by learning about your backstory a little bit,
Sure.
So we could, sort of get a sense of who you are and where you come from, and then kind of segue into what you're doing now. So tell us a little bit more about you and what you did growing up.
Let me briefly try to get through 33 years. So I was born in Iran, and we moved to Greece when I was 2 years old. Then moved to the U.S. when I was 5. So English is actually my third language. And I just remember coming here as a young kid and just absorbing the American culture and being so eager to, learn English. And I was watching Nickelodeon all the time, and I just became so immersed in entertainment here, So growing up, I think writing was a big thing for me. I was never good at math. I was always really good at writing. And I just was always so immersed in episodics on TV, both cartoons and real people. So I developed an interest in that pretty early on. But, as the child of immigrants or an immigrant myself, it's hard to sort of, discover more about something you're interested in when your parents didn't really grow up here and can't really guide you either way. My parents were great growing up. They gave me everything they could to the best of their ability, but I kind of made my way on my own. So one thing I knew that I had to do was get through schooling because, my parents dropped everything and came here for me to get an education. So
That's the story.
Yes, absolutely. And I had to honor that. And it's not like I didn't want to. I really wanted to get an education. So I committed to getting at least one degree, which was, the bachelor's. And then I ended up getting a master's degree too, both at USC. And once I got my master's degree, during that schooling, during those 2 years, I had kind of decided I was going to go corporate.
And what was your degree in? Or both degrees?
Communication was my undergrad, and then communication management with an emphasis on brand strategy and marketing. So I could have gone to TBWA, Saatchi & Saatchi at the time, Deloitte. I could have gotten into consulting. I just knew that I was good at it and I could do these things. But, the closer we got to graduation, I was like, I'd be missing this huge chunk in my life, being creative and just creating as much as I wanted to, whenever I wanted to. So I kind of just said, I have these degrees. I've got everything to fall back on. Yeah. So that's when I sort of took a year to sort of do some soul searching. And then at the same time that I started acting, which I had wanted to do since I was super young, finally developed the courage to do it, I also started a blog. I started the blog because, I'd always written, and it was a big strength of mine.
And this is Miss Maven?
That was Miss Maven at the time, yeah. And because I'd get so many questions from people about beauty products and how to do things and tips and tricks. So I said, instead of trying to go to New York and work for a magazine and try to, and in hindsight now I'm trying to think, if I'd actually done that, now the editorial business is completely dying. It would have been so bad. So I said, jobs are terrible now. I'm just going to take the risk and start a blog. Nobody back then knew what a blog was. Nobody cared. They're like, you do what? What do you do? Obviously, I wasn't making a living right off the bat. I was broke for a good chunk, good few years.
So, Teni, you touched upon something that, it might, I don't want it to be uncomfortable to talk about, and I don't
not
think
at
it
all.
will be, but I know a lot of people that are, let's call them millennials. I don't like
Sure.
the word, but that's what they are. In their 20s, early 30s, like, they're still trying to figure out what to do. I have friends that went to college with me or other colleges, and they come out of there with a bachelor's, master's, professional degree, and they're still kind of confused about what they want to do. And you mentioned that you took time off to go soul searching.
Yeah.
What was that time like? What was Teni thinking, and what did that result in?
See, that was a unique time to be doing that because I was at the tail end of the strictly professional Generation X, I guess, and the beginning phase of Gen Y or millennials. So to take that time off was like, what are you doing? You just got a master's degree.
Right.
Get your ass up and get a job.
And you just spent all this money to go to school. It's like,
Yeah.
what am I going to do to get it back?
Exactly. So it was a little bit, like I said, now it's so much more acceptable to do that. But at the time, it just was unheard of. So it was uncomfortable, but I had a vision. And it was at the time, I didn't know how I was going to get there, but it was like this almost, if I closed my eyes, it was almost tangible, like what I wanted the rest of my life to be.
And what was that vision?
I wanted just to be able to create and to work on my own terms. I tried, you guys, I tried it. I tried working alongside a really successful commercial real estate agent. He was like, I'll show you the ropes, we'll do this. And I tried it and I was like, I cannot do this. I can't work on someone else's terms. It just,
Right.
not that I'm too good for it or anything like that. It has everything to do with just having so much more in mind, so much more that I don't go to work at 9 o'clock and come home at 6 o'clock and leave everything at the office. I'm working 7 days a week,
Right.
and it's always on my mind.
But it's on your own terms. I think that's like the key
Yeah, of course.
phrase.
Absolutely.
So a lot of people that Pat and I talk to, they say that we have all these ideas and we want to go out and do it, but we're afraid to jump in because, we're afraid of the failure, obviously. And, if we fail, it's not that we're failing that's the big deal. It's that if we fail, we don't really have money to survive. We're like, they don't have that financial security.
Yeah.
How did you take that leap of faith and say, I know I want to work for myself. I want to do what I want to do. And I know that there's a risk that comes with
Yeah.
it, but I'm just going to do it anyways.
I don't come from money. I come from a working class family, and they did whatever they could to support me, which wasn't much, So there were days when I had like $17 in my bank account. I was like, I don't know what the hell I'm going to do for the next 14 days before I, get another check. Because when I was doing commercials, it was great because
Right.
that would sustain me for a good long time. But if I wasn't booking another one, it was like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh.
It's one of those
what am I
things where it's
gonna
like,
do?
it could be few and far between, and you don't know because you have to
Yes.
keep your whole schedule open. And then when they book you, they book you. And if you say no, then that's it for
Exactly.
a while. So.
But if you're going to make that decision to sort of be very risky and do that and not have a lot of money to fall back on, I met up with a student right now at USC who asked me to have lunch. I'd spoken to her master's class, and she stopped me and said, hey, could we have lunch? I'd love to pick your brain. So I went back to campus, we had lunch, and I was so impressed with how hard she just hustles. She's doing things that, other people might just idly sit by and wait for something to happen. She's getting out there sending emails, getting in touch with people, and she's getting opportunities, you know what I mean, while she's in school. So I think that's really the key is just is thinking outside the box and doing things that aren't necessarily traditional or like acceptable, I guess. You have to get in touch with people. You have to network with people. I'm personally not even good at that. So I was so impressed when she was telling me that. I was like, listen, you're doing great. You've got a future. And that's another thing is I told her, I said, listen, I can always see the difference between someone who has a clear vision of what they want their future to be and someone who's just kind of like, well, I'm interested in journalism. You know what I mean? It's like, it's a very distinct difference.
Yeah. So you said that you were kind of like trying to do the whole acting thing, and so in between you started a blog. Why did you? And you had said because you had friends approaching you about makeup. Is that right?
Yeah.
So what was your vision for that blog? Like I know you did a lot of makeup reviews and things like that.
Yeah.
But first of all, why a blog versus something else? And second, what did you think it was going to become?
Well, a blog because it was it was the only thing that I could own 100%
Yeah.
on my own. You know, it was mine, and I didn't have to have any partners. The overhead was, you know, practically nothing. So that's why it was a blog. But I, because I was fresh out of my master's program, I was so like in this business mindset. So I was like, I need a business plan. We need to compare our competitors. Like it was
20-page.
It was serious, and it
PowerPoint.
was such a waste of time. It was such a waste. But again, this is what I mean is, you know, there was so much like error along the way. But like if I hadn't failed all those times, I wouldn't have, you know, eventually found my way. Like no path is going to be, okay, we were planning this and everything's going to go according to plan. It just does not happen that way. So I set out for it to be sort of like this online magazine. But over the years, I started to learn that people just want a connection with a real person. And that's what it comes down to. They don't want this perfectly polished professional product written by an editor that they don't know. They want some kind of connection to the person whose words they're reading.
And when you figured that out, how did you transition from, and I know you said early on, like you liked writing, that was something that you always did, but when you learned that your audience or, you know, just people in general want to connect with a real human being, and I think that's the case now too, how did you make that transition from, you know, writing blogs to what you eventually ended up doing?
You know, it wasn't an easy transition for me because I'm not like a super open, transparent, wear my heart on my sleeve kind of person.
Right.
I'm such an introvert. I'm very private. It's not easy for me to talk about my feelings and stuff.
Right.
So that wasn't an easy transition for me. But every time I've gone there and like pushed the boundaries, my own boundaries, and like made myself vulnerable, the feedback you get from people is so rewarding. It makes you feel connected to them too. And it makes you realize that these are people. These are not just consumers. They're not just readers. They're not a statistic. They are people that, you know, go through similar things. So every time I do that, every time I sort of tell either a personal story or reveal something about myself that's not necessarily like super positive, it always turns out positively because people want to see that. They want to see real.
And I think that, and again, like I think we'll lead this into social media and how that's had an effect on, you know, your livelihood and your business. But I feel like on social media, you don't want to show the difficult times. Like you don't want to show that, you know, that business that I started, it failed. You just kind of like let it die out naturally. Yeah. But that's like what happens to the majority of people. Yeah. So, you know, how have you been able to connect with folks using that raw, like not only emotion, but really kind of sharing your real life story as it's happening?
You know, it's funny because as you said, on Instagram, you look at someone's feed and it's this perfect life.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's what people are inclined to share. And it sort of sets this dangerous precedent for, you know, what people expect life to be. But, you know, there are, it's either, I mean, it could be with a post, which I did the other day. I was very vulnerable. I wrote a post, again, just about like, just humbling myself. And then outside of that, just even getting on either Snapchat or Instagram stories and showing this not perfect, you know, polished product. You're just like this with your phone, you know? You're in your pajamas, you're just fresh out of bed, you don't have makeup on, you probably haven't even brushed your teeth, but you're talking to your friends on Instagram. So I think those are the important places where you connect with people. And not wait to, you know, let me make sure my hair is right and then talk to them.
Right.
You know, it's you have to show them every aspect of your life.
Yeah.
Kind of to talk about that inception stage of like when you launched the blog. I know you said that you didn't know what it was going to become, and it was kind of like a fun thing because you wanted to share your ideas and whatever creativity like with your friends and with the world. At what point did it become like something that you're like, whoa, like there's something here I can actually double down on this and take it really far?
So that's at threefold, I think. One is just seeing the readership and the comments. Two is the PR companies and the brands coming to me saying, hey, we'd love to send you our products to review. And I was like, oh my God, really? That's amazing. Yeah. Thank you. And then also introducing YouTube into my
repertoire.
Yes, exactly. That medium changed everything. I mean, YouTube, again, because people don't want to, obviously there is an audience that wants to read, but a lot of people want to,
visually
watch.
see.
They just
especially if
wanna
it's
watch.
makeup. It's like
Yes,
it's something you
exactly.
wanna see.
Especially like this generation of people. I mean, like,
100%.
we want that instant gratification. I want it now, and I want it here, and I don't want to read and read and read. Like, just give it to me right now.
Yeah.
That's it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I think that's what, once the YouTube got rolling, it was like, that's really what made all the difference.
Right. So like initially, how did people find out about you? Like, what were you doing?
I think I just followed the concept of if you build it, they will come. And that's really it. You put out these articles and there's keywords in it. The Google crawlers are going to pick them up. And at a certain point, if you typed in beauty blog in a Google search, I was on the front page, third search down, for like right after Lauren Conrad's blog.
Wow.
Like I was like, how did I get here? And it was just completely organic. Just all the words on my blog got me there.
Yeah.
I wasn't like paying major bucks for like
And you said
SEO.
you were one of the first people to like be on that at the time.
I mean, not one of the first. I think at the time, like in 2011, people have had blogs since like 2008. Like
Right.
there's been people that have been around for more than 10 years. But I think that, that again, that has changed so much.
Yeah, I mean, like I remember back then, like people didn't really talk too much about watching like tutorials and things like that on YouTube. It was like just kind of getting big, and now obviously it's a huge industry.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Tenny, Pat and I have read this book by Simon Sinek, and I'm sure a lot of our listeners have too. I think it's called Starts with Why, or Starting with Why.
Start with why.
And it's how, basically a lot of businesses start with like what they're going to do. Like, we're going to make a coffee cup. But he talks about, and again, I'm highly summarizing the book, about like why. Like, I'm making this coffee cup because, and starting off with the why. Like, why am I doing this? And early on, you were talking about how, your mission was really to create, like, to obviously work for yourself, but to create something and something that would hopefully, impact others. How did this vlog and how did the blog and the vlog and everything else that you've done, how does that tie back into your original mission of creating?
Well, I mean, look, I have the opportunity every single day to wake up and have an idea and bring it to life. Whether that's in words, in photos, or in moving picture. That is a freedom that I have every single day, and that's exactly what I set out to do from the very start. And the thing is, too, at the time, you're thinking, I just want to create. That turns into so many different things. At this point, I want to go behind the camera, too, and just produce my own stuff, not necessarily with me in it. I don't know what that looks like in an influencer world, but I think one step would be to start my own production company, because that would satisfy, my own videos. I'd have an in-house team that could make my videos, because right now I'm doing everything by myself.
Yeah, that was going to be my question. Like from the beginning, were you doing everything, recording, editing?
Everything. I MacGyvered my way through this industry like you wouldn't believe.
It's a lot of work to stay consistent, because like content-wise, like if you're not consistent with content, like you're probably not going to be the top page and things like that.
Yes,
so.
and that was the way of YouTube in the beginning. Now it's like this weird AI world of like algorithms that don't make sense. So I subscribe to the quality over quantity school of thought now.
I'm just thinking here, and what you did is obviously, I mean, incredible, and you don't hear these stories very often. Was there a time that, in this journey, that you ever doubted, not yourself per se, but the path you were on? No,
not once, because every time I stop to think of like what I'd envisioned and what it's turned into, I mean, it shocks me, but it also invigorates me to keep going, and then to take it a step further and a step further and a step further, because, we're in an age now that we have so much power just within ourselves, like in your own bedroom. It doesn't even have to be in a studio or, if you have something in your mind, you can create it. There's nothing stopping you from creating it. Whereas before, I mean, now everything is so smart. All the cameras are smart. It's so easy to edit a video. There's nothing stopping us from creating. So I just think that there was never a reason to doubt it. There's nothing that ever stood in my way and said, oh, maybe you should, shift your path. It just never happened.
How does it feel like to work for yourself, but also kind of keep yourself motivated? When you work with a team where there's other people around you, it's like, oh, Pat, go hard, let's do this. Yes. Like, we're almost there. These are our goals. Let's get them done. Mm-hmm. How do you keep yourself motivated all the time, day after day, all these years, and continue kind of reaching new heights?
Well, you don't. That's the short answer.
Right.
It's impossible to stay motivated all the time. And in fact, there are times where, I guess maybe this alters my previous answer, but not like it's just surface level.
Yeah.
There are times where I'm just like, this is trash. You don't know what you're doing. Like, why does anyone even watch you? You're terrible. You go through those moments where you're low on motivation. You think your work sucks. So you just have to take a step back and just kind of it's an artist thing.
Most founders and artists are self-critics and the most critical of their work more than anybody, because you know yourself so well, and you're like, you know what you're capable of. Mm-hmm. That's definitely something that we hear about a lot too.
Yeah, it's challenging, especially for someone like me. I'm a perfectionist. And especially, working for yourself, it's not easy to stay motivated. And
completely,
confession, I am a lazy person by nature, really. I have to go the extra mile to keep myself motivated. But I think it just comes in, anytime like an idea comes up, that in itself is motivation, because all you want to do is make that idea come to life.
Yeah,
mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And what I'm hearing from you, and I think what Pat and I talk about all the time, is it's very relatable to our generation. This is something that when we sit down with friends, we talk about it. Like, we don't want to work for somebody. Mm-hmm. And if we do, we always have this thing of we want to eventually work for ourselves. Yeah. But then at the same time, who's going to keep us accountable? I'm just trying to think, what drives you? Is it that you have this, listener base, this fan base that is expecting you to do it, or is it just Teni wanting to exceed her own expectations?
I think, it's me. What drives me, I think, is wanting to have a really secure future, and if I had kids one day, for them to be really proud of me, to mm-hmm. Look at me and want to, feel motivated themselves to want to achieve something great. Again, mm-hmm. I'll say it again. My parents were great growing up. They did the best they could with what they had. Right. But I didn't have anything to look up to and mm-hmm. say, this is my role model. This is my guide. Right. So I want my kids to think I'm cool and that I'm so successful and look up to me. So I think of my future, and that's what keeps driving me is, I think of what I'll be doing in a few years, because mm-hmm. I can't possibly be doing YouTube forever. So I have to think about, licensing, merchandising, other things that will sort of sustain themselves in a different way than I'm doing now.
Kind of going back to that vision that you said you initially had for your life, your career, and that's kind of what you put that work that you put into it. Mm-hmm. What advice would you give to someone that may have this really grand vision, and knows the level of hard work and they're hardworking, but kind of they don't know where to start? And I guess to kind of take that to another level is how much would you say luck has played a part in that as well, versus just the work that you put in?
Sure. Luck is, I don't know that I necessarily believe in luck. I think it has more to do with how clear your vision is, because the clearer it is, the more you know exactly where you want to be, mm-hmm. the more your feet are actually just going to, go into those prints and follow that path. It's inevitable that, if you're envisioning yourself exactly somewhere that you want to be, you will reach it. You might have detours here and there that lead you down a wrong path. You're just going to have to back up and get right back on the path. I don't know that luck, I think maybe for some people, for me, actually, if luck had anything to do with it, I think this would all have happened maybe a few years earlier for me. I definitely hit a lot of roadblocks and speed bumps and learned along the way. But I think the luckiest thing for me really is that I'm working with my agent. The fact that she found me and wanted to represent me, because she's made a huge difference in the path that my career has gone in.
Teni, I guess let's talk about a little bit more about what the daily life looks like.
Sure.
Now you said that you have an agent, And I know that a lot of the work has to deal, not a lot of the work, but a good amount of the work has to deal with your relationships with different people and different
Yes.
brands. How hard was it to get those folks on in the beginning and, get recognized and then obviously scale yourself into, where you are today and hopefully where you hope to go?
Well, it's funny. In the beginning, you're asking them to notice you. Now they're begging you to talk to them.
Right.
Full circle.
And that's a great place to be in.
Absolutely,
actually,
absolutely, and it gives you leverage over your own career. Whereas before it was like, okay, we'll take every opportunity. Now it's like we're more discerning about what we're actually gonna go on board for and what we want to be associated with. I'm actually right now in the process. I just finished up a vlog where I went to New York like 10 days ago. And I wanted to show people sort of what happens, because all they see really is here I'm eating a sandwich at a cafe, or like, or like I'm at a fashion show in New York. But I wanted to show more of what happens. So I had a shoot there with Sephora. I showed them a little bit of the behind the scenes, what was happening there. But my agent said, listen, stay another day. I'm going to schedule about 6 meetings for you.
just stay another day and just work. You're like,
No,
don't
really.
don't go have fun.
My agent, she rides me so hard. You have no idea. Like 11 o'clock at night, we'll be texting about like strategy.
But see, that's somebody that keeps you accountable now. Or, like, really,
100. Jade Sherman, if you're listening,
Shout out Jade
oh my
Sherman.
gosh.
Yeah.
You have no, if she hears this, she'll laugh. Like, no kidding. She really holds me
Sounds like the type
accountable.
of agent you want to work with.
Yes,
Right.
100%. She's such a shark. She's a go-getter, and I need that kick in the ass. So, so yeah, in that vlog, I just wanted to, those meetings aren't just to have coffee and eat. They're to, it's almost like an interview. They're getting to know me.
You're interviewing them, or they're interviewing you.
It's kind of like, they're getting to know me. I'm getting to know them. We're going to see if I'm a good fit for the
right.
brand. And also, that's my opportunity to pitch ideas.
Right.
I'm going back to New York this weekend, and I'm taking handouts with me, and I'm going to hand it out to every single Sephora executive. And that's just how it has to happen. Not every influencer plays the game that way. And obviously, that works to my advantage. But, not everybody approaches it that way.
We're not asking you, I guess, to give away any secrets here, but when you meet with like these executives, and you talk about like, ideas, what exactly is it that you're pitching to them?
So it could be anything. It could range from just a one-off video on YouTube, which
you would be in?
I would do, which I would
Right.
be in, which I prefer not to do, because at this point we're really trying to have meaningful long-term relationships with brands, the ones that make sense. So that's typically what I like to pitch, is sort of like a bigger picture, a bigger partnership that spans maybe 6 months to a year. Those have always turned out to be really successful. But I'll take in my iPad, I'll have a little presentation. Maybe if I have an idea for a video, which I've had 2 really solid ones that I pitched to one of the brands and I need to pitch to the other one, that are very specifically geared to that brand.
Right.
It has to do with their products, or if they have 3 hero products, show the consumer what each one does, that kind of video. Or if another one comes from a certain part of the world, let's go to that part of the world and do just a celebratory video of that brand, Yeah. So it's like, the creative comes from me.
Right.
And, that's my opportunity to pitch to them and say, hey, listen, I have this idea. And more often than not, they're very receptive, and it ends up turning into something.
How much research goes into these pitches and presentations that you're doing? Because and the reason I ask, let me clarify the reason I'm asking, is because a lot of people that, and perhaps myself included, think that being an influencer is very easy. You go up, you post a picture, you post a video, ta-da, like you make some money. But from this conversation already, I can kind of gauge that that's really not the case. Like there's a lot of work, a lot of research, a lot of kind of targeting that goes into every single conversation, every single meeting that you're taking. Is that something that you're doing on your end?
Yes, and like I said, it's not typical. There's a small handful of people that are doing that, and I think that, for the sake of longevity, that's really the way to do it.
It's like what happens when the well goes dry, and no one's
Exactly.
on Instagram anymore, and no one's. So
you could easily be the easy influencer and just post pictures, and I don't know. I don't even know what that looks like, to be honest with you, how you actually make money that way. But I've seen a lot of people post like, oh, this is so hard. Like, it seemed so easy just doing pictures and stuff. I'm like, what did you think this was? Like,
I didn't know which filter to choose.
yeah. No, it just, it honestly doesn't even offend me when people say that. I'm like, I'm getting my checks. I don't care what you think about it, you know? But it's better for me to sort of quietly be working behind the scenes.
Right.
Nobody has to know about it.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter to me if
I
anybody
definitely want to come back to this and talk about kind of your vision for your future and what you want to do. But kind of to go back to, so you started Miss Maven, which was like your first blog, and then you sort of transitioned or started a new blog called Remarques.
Yes.
Is that right? Tell us more about why you did that.
So I was starting to feel really stale and just not motivated to do the blog thing anymore. And for a long time, I couldn't figure it out. I was like, why am I not into this anymore? Is it just that I'm so into YouTube? Which, yeah, I am. But, the blog is the one thing that I will always own 100%. Instagram could die tomorrow. YouTube can just go off the map tomorrow. But I thought about it and I was like, I've outgrown it. Miss Maven just sounded kind of juvenile. And I'd outgrown it. As much as I love it and that's where I got my start, I just was like, I need something a little more elevated, something a little more mature. So that's where it came from. I wanted it to look like, when you visit the site, like a really high-end department store kind of thing.
It does. Yeah, it's a great website.
And there's a little ode to Miss Maven with the M. The M is a different color. So I really needed to shake things up. It just wasn't inspiring me anymore to write on that blog. So this is just a little more grown up, a little more, and this one is more, we're not just writing about beauty. It's personal stories, home, home is a big thing that I've been focusing on lately. So it's like an all-encompassing, I like to call it a digital diary.
Why did you decide to kind of have an all-encompassing blog versus just beauty? Because that was kind of what grew your career, but now you have a huge following and everyone's kind of looking to you, for inspiration on anything. So was that the reason?
Yeah, it's just the demand from people. It's you see them yearning for certain things and. Home is a big one. They keep asking for more home videos. I'm like, what more can I possibly show you?
Other people's homes.
Or more homes. Buy more homes.
Yeah. Exactly. That's where the real estate background comes in.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, they're just, that goes right back to them wanting a personal connection with you. Seeing into your home is another way to sort of connect with you a little bit because it's your abode. This is where you are yourself.
Right.
Pat and I always talk about this phrase that we've heard, used several times about do things that don't scale, just do the best that you could do, but don't necessarily be concerned about how you're going to grow it. Just do it, be the best at it, and then it will figure it out kind of thing. Where do you go from here in terms of growing and scaling your personal efforts into perhaps something bigger where you have a team of people doing what you're doing, or you have, like you said earlier, a production team?
Yeah.
I mean, how do you go from where you are now to, even higher heights?
First, I'd have to change my personality because I'm so bad about relinquishing duties to other people.
I mean, as anybody.
Really bad.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't even have an assistant. I've needed an assistant for about 2 years, and I don't have one, and I'm going out of my mind. Some days I just want to hurl myself into traffic. It gets really stressful.
I'm sure we're going to have a lot of listeners that are going to hit us up and be like, can we connect you to Kenny? Kenny, we want to be your assistant. I'm sure it's going to happen.
I am a tyrant, just so you know. But that's
good training.
It's hard. It's hard because, you want something done, but you want it done the way you would do it, and I just have to accept that that's not 100% possible,
right.
But it's a matter of finding the time to really train someone, and so that's step one for me. But I think that continuing to do what we're doing, Jade and I, just taking the business route is so fruitful because brands appreciate that you're taking an approach, or you're speaking a language that they understand, for one. And it puts them at ease that you understand that, there's a reputation to uphold, there's a brand identity to communicate, there's certain things you have to hit. But sometimes influencers just want to post a photo, put the caption in, and call it a day. But I think they just really appreciate seeing that extra work, and I think that's going to sustain us. But I do think that going into products is going to be what will sort of be the long-term plan.
And would these
in
be
growth.
and would these be your own products, or would it be, you know, partnerships with existing brands?
Perhaps they could start as partnerships, but eventually it will have to be my own brand.
And that would be like in the beauty industry or just home.
It could.
It's
could
like
be
it's
either.
like it's like Teni's own guilt, like this Teni beauty, Teni home, Teni office.
I have a passion for each one of those. It will just come down to when the timing is right. Which one really, speaks to me the most.
Which will definitely require more than just you.
Yes.
To build,
at that point,
to build, right.
Take it off my hands.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. Well, I'm kind of curious, like, kind of looking at like what you've built so far, and going back to like what you studied in college, advertising. It kind of plays into like how social media is. Yeah. Become this kind of platform for promoting whatever you're promoting. Mm-hmm. Like, you could just have your regular Instagram, but then, so many social media influencers have built a career out of this. Mm-hmm. But if for some reason, like, let's say you just didn't have a big following and weren't able to build that, what would you have done with what your kind of passions are?
Wow. I think probably I would have ended up at an ad agency, because they still get to have that. First of all, the environment is great. I remember during my master's, we had sort of a field trip to TBWA, and the offices were like crazy. It was just like a giant warehouse. There was a Nissan hanging from the ceiling. There were gargoyles and basketball courts. So it's an environment that cultivates creativity. So I most likely would have ended up there, where I'd be working on different accounts for,
Mad Men style.
Yeah, exactly.
With some cigarettes and whiskey. Daily.
But it looked like I said, the environment wasn't stale and like cubicles. It just wasn't like that. So that's the one thing I've always just been really afraid of, is just being in this really sterile environment where there's nothing creative happening.
Recently, I was having a conversation with somebody about like turning your passion into a career. A lot of times we talk about passions as our hobbies, but you're, I think, an amazing example of literally taking your passion from day one and making it a career. I know another one of your passions is acting, and that's something that you've done in the past. And we were talking yesterday, and I think it's something that you're taking up, or you're trying to improve on. I don't want to call it improve, because I'm assuming that you want to.
I'm a world-class actress.
Right, exactly.
already.
you just haven't broken out yet, So, and also you said you want to get behind the camera. How does that shift take place, and how do you even have time for that?
It's funny, because I was doing well in TV, film, and commercial before digital took off. I had some fun bookings that people still see, and they will comment like, "Oh my gosh, I saw you in this," and it's fun for me to see that, because it feels like another life at this point. Right. My plan was to, put the brakes on auditioning for a little while, get myself together, balance this whole digital thing, and then come back 6 months, a year. It's 3.5 years later. And I'm just now, actually 4 years, I'm just now, getting back into it, because one, I miss it. And two, this is what I wanted all along, Digital just, and I am so grateful for everything that's happened, but it just got so busy, and it took hold of my life. So I just stepped away for longer than I expected. But, acting and what I'm doing in YouTube and all that, it's storytelling, it's in the same vein. Obviously it's different arts, but I missed it so much, and I finally made the decision to, and what switched, the gears for me was, I went in for a random commercial audition. I hadn't been in a long time, and usually commercial auditions are very they're not really acting. We're talking about a product here. So I went in, and it was me and one other guy, and the guy behind camera made us improv for about 15 minutes, and I walked out of there and it went so well, and I walked out of there being like, oh my gosh, I miss this so much. That felt so good. And I think it was at a time where digital was starting to feel stale for me. I was sort of low on inspiration. So I said, we're doing this. We're going back. So I'm in class, and I'm so happy. And, I'm going to be able to leverage this following when it comes to booking work,
No doubt. No doubt.
So you said you work 7 days a week. Like any, business person, creator. What do you do in your free time if you have any?
I like to stay in my house a lot.
I mean, you have a beautiful home.
Thank you.
We're speaking or doing this podcast in our home right now.
Thanks. So. Yeah, I mean, this is one of my hobbies is just, decorating the house, gardening. I love gardening. I'm out there all the time watering them and talking to my plants.
What's something you tell your plants?
I mean, I just kind of, it's more like commentary, like, ooh, this one looks a little dry. Like, we should probably prune this one.
Third person, not first person.
Yeah.
It's commentary. But my dogs, I love being with my dogs. I love going over to my mom's house. I mean, I'm a very dull person. I really don't do anything super exciting.
Well, I mean, that stuff is like, I mean, I feel like so many people overlook that. Like family and just being home and being with yourself.
Exactly. My work itself I get to do really exciting things with work. So really the downtime, I just want to be with my family, want to be with my friends, just hanging out.
I asked the question in one of our interviews. It must have been a while ago at this point. And I asked it in the beginning, but I like the question, so I'm just going to ask it again. And the question was, if you can create any flavor of frozen yogurt, what would it be?
Any flavor of frozen yogurt. Seaweed.
Whoa. Was not expecting that.
I was not either.
That's a good one.
That's a very good one. Yeah, why?
I love, the seaweed sheets?
Yeah, I do.
Oh, those are so addicting. They're really good.
So you think that would be good in a frozen yogurt form? I'm just not judging you.
I'm actually really blown away by that. That sounds like
What about a 1942?
an amazing business opportunity here.
Ooh, see, now we're talking.
Okay, yeah.
Now we're talking.
Right?
Or is Don Julio one of your brand sponsors?
No.
They should be. They should be.
Oh, it wasn't a Dos Equis commercial,
Okay,
so
there you go.
a little
There
bit
you
of
go.
conflict
There
there.
It's okay. Oh, yeah, so I'm glad you bring that up because I was going to ask you what happens when there is conflict between potential partnerships.
This is a very interesting time because I'm union. I'm a SAG member, so they haven't really specified YouTube as one of their platforms, but it's not TV or film, So my agency will handle that when it comes up. They'll know the right thing to do. All by the book. I think they eventually will figure out what needs to be done.
Kind of talk about YouTube actually. What are your thoughts on sort of where it's come since when it was kind of just growing and I mean obviously the monetization aspect of it and people who are doing really well on YouTube were making really great living.
Sure.
But now it's kind of from what I've heard it's kind of not the same anymore. So what are your thoughts on it?
I think the biggest mistake was making the algorithm artificial intelligence, or just regulating the content. I think that YouTube doesn't stand by their original motto, which was by creators for creators. It's not for creators anymore. I think it's really just for their bottom line.
And now it's owned by Google, so I mean it's really strictly they're trying to just.
And I
make
mean
money.
that's not new,
right?
But it's just they've made certain moves that I don't feel bad saying I don't approve of. A lot of creators do not approve of it. So I think we're all sort of. I don't know if we're hungry for a new platform, but I think for me at least, I'm just committed to continuing to make my content.
Yeah. But how do you see the paradigm shifting for the next generation, right? That they want to be social media influencers and they want to be this kind of really famous person on social media.
It's crazy. They ask kids now in elementary school what they want to be when they grow up, and everyone says, "I want to be a YouTube star." And that blows me away. I can't even fathom thinking that as a child. So I don't know. It's weird to me. So I think, it's not going in a good direction in my opinion. I think the direction it's going in is just really cheap thrills. Everything's very.
I feel like there's so much content out there where to find the good stuff is tough these days.
Yeah, a lot of the clickbait stuff is trending, and it's really
and it's changed journalism as well. I mean,
what's
it's pretty dead.
What's journalism? It's now everyone's talking about fake news. What do you mean? Grow up. What are you talking about? So dumb. And even journalism, everything is really sensationalist, and you read a headline and you get all angry, and then you read the article and you're like, that's not what she said.
Right.
So why did you write that headline?
And it's funny you say that, because a part of why Patrick and I are, even doing this podcast was, number one, we just like telling stories. And these are stories that we have, and we've shared with others, and we've heard from others, and we said, let's get behind the mic and share this. And at the same time, I feel like it's a good way for people to really kind of learn, educate themselves, and also kind of be entertained by real news coming from real people's mouths, and so that's why we kind of have done this. But Teni, I want to wrap up with this question. You touched upon it a little bit. If you were to create, or if there was to be another social media platform, what would it look like?
I think that it needs to include different kind of content, not just photo and video. You know how Tumblr, allowed you to put up music, and I just think it needs to be a little richer. If I'm listening to a piece of music that I really like right now, I'd love to be able to post that on my feed, but have it still work with my feed and look good. So I think that if there were to be another platform, for one thing, it should be chronological, period.
Yeah. No algorithm.
Yeah, no algorithm.
Not a fan
Facebook,
of algorithms.
I'm talking about you.
Mark specifically.
Mark, I'm talking about you.
Zuck, I hope you're listening.
So, it just has to go back to why people joined social media in the first place. That's really the bottom line is it's been derailed so much from that path that nobody really enjoys it like they used to.
Right.
Well, Teni, it's been an awesome conversation. Great learning more about your story, and also really curious and excited to see where you take it to the next level. Whether it's creating your own production company, launching your own frozen yogurt, seaweed flavored, winning an Emmy, or I don't know, having a stint in Silicon Valley with your own social media platform. Thanks for being on the show with us.
Thank you, guys.